by a tree for all the paperwork that he's got?
Fire starter.
Very minor. Before we start, I forgot to mention that we got a sign up list right here for folks that want to speak. We're going to stop 30 minutes early. I'd like to start again by thanking everybody that has been part of this committee. I feel like there was a lot of concern when we started this from the community about how this was supposed to work and what the library was doing, gosh darn it. People wanted to know.
Yeah.
And I think that this open committee and the way we've gone through this and the fact that we've had people that were willing to volunteer their time and read the masses of paper that I seem to send out after every meeting, I just want to let you know I appreciate it, and I feel like this has helped the library build back the reputation I wanted to have, and I always thought it had, as being an open and honest discusser of public information and all that kind of stuff that we want our library to do for us. So with you guys' help, we have achieved my goal, which is to allow people to feel comfortable with their library. So thank you very much. I know that the staff of the library has mentioned that they are very happy with the way this committee is working and how it's bringing the library back to what we were hoping to have it be in our community. Wow, that's kind of fumbly, but I don't know. I'm not much of a public speaker, so there we go. I see that we are basically everybody that's here today has been here quite a few times, so I'm gonna really slim down my statement, my opening statement. This is the Material Selection Policy Committee. We're basically going through this in a public way. I expect to provide the board a recommended policy at the end of this meeting, where I expect to have the policy pretty much squared away. The board will go through this policy as individuals. It will go to the Wilson Law Firm for review as well. We've already talked about it with them. And I would expect for the policy votes to occur on the agenda of the 16th of March board meeting. So basically 1 month from tomorrow. And the idea behind that is that it allows the board members to go through and look at this and make sure that they agree with it. And I don't know that it will be passed at the 16th of March meeting, but I expect it to be discussed. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Aren't board members being voted on in March?
May 16th is the voting.
So there'll be a whole new board or possibly, I mean.
Well, there's only two.
I understand, new board members possibly.
So, having talked to the county clerk, the way it will work is, because I'm filling in for Judy Mays, who passed away, that I am up for election, and whoever wins Judy Mays' old seats will be in place for 2 years, and then fall into the cycle that Judy Mays' zone would fall into.
6 years.
So every 6 years after that. So, and that happens on May 16th of this year, is when the voting occurs, okay? Are there any questions about that?
Yeah, actually there is.
What's that?
What's going on with Wendy? Is she gonna be able to come back? Cause, I know the Idaho statute says 2 meetings that she misses, but it's also excused, and I understand that she's having medical issues, but where are we at with this? Are we gonna have a full board?
Wendy expects to be at the meeting tomorrow.
Oh, perfect, okay.
So, I don't
That's great.
answer those questions. I know that she expects to be
Okay.
at the meeting tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
Let's see. Okay, and then people will be allowed to speak. Currently nobody signed up. We'll stop 30 minutes early. We're not here to discuss current and past employees. And I think that pretty much is it, the last thing I was gonna remind everybody is the next board meeting is tomorrow here from 11 to 12. So that's the next
Oh,
board.
11? Starts at 11?
It starts at 11 to
No
12.
wonder I miss them all the time. I come here at 10.
No, it starts at 10.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
You're gonna be lately.
Unless it's changed.
No, it's 10 o'clock. I've got the agenda.
Does it say 10 on the agenda?
Well, I'm recording right now, but I believe it did.
Okay. Can somebody look that up on their phone for me?
I left mine in the car because.
I got mine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good. I only have a dumb phone. I never made it to the smartphone here.
Actually, you were the smart one.
I want to throw that in the river. See, this thing's shot-proof and waterproof. You can throw mine in the river, it doesn't make any difference.
All right, so let's go to, well, we're looking up the agenda to make sure I'm wrong. Let's go to, the start here. We called order at 10. Let's see, today is 15th. Has everybody had a chance to go through today's agenda?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Sure.
Second.
And then do we have a vote to accept the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. And then I would do that. And then do we have, did everybody get a chance to go through the minutes?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and we've gone through the minutes. Just to remind everybody, the recorder is on, so do that again.
We talked a lot.
Okay, do I have a motion for to approve the minutes as they are? Okay, second?
Second.
Okay. And then do we all approve the amendments?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I would just go to the library and what page?
Yeah, on the front page under rooms.
Yeah. Upcoming events. There you go. Board of Trustees meetings start at 10 to 11. Sorry, I'm incorrect, it's 10
It
to
is
11
10,
tomorrow.
okay.
Yeah, all right.
You're just trying to see if we're listening.
Well, not really.
No, we're just gonna be talking about you at 10 o'clock. We don't want you here yet.
You're wondering why I'm not here, it's because I'm not telling you the memory. Okay, so we made it through the agenda, or the minutes. So, just to make sure that we're all good, I would kind of like to work our way through each of these forms that we're talking about. Yes? Do you have something?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, but, the board letter that goes in with the packet,
Yes?
I think should be from the board. I don't think that we should have anything to do with the actual letter, that we should put it in the packet, have a letter from the board, but not have us write the letter.
Well,
But we're not.
They'll approve it. They'll change it if they want to. Is that
Right.
what you're meaning, is that?
Well,
But we're not on there.
no, we're not on it, but we're writing it. We're saying that this is what they have to put in the packet, that it's worded
If the
this
board
way.
doesn't like it, they'll change it.
We're writing the whole path, the whole,
We're so.
well, honestly, I just.
but I agree, they will. I think, I
And
hope
the
they
whole
will.
board needs to sign it.
Right, and that's why they're getting the 30 days to look at all this stuff. Is they're gonna go through and they're gonna see, and if there's something they wanna change, then that's where we'll change it.
Okay.
Okay, so, the first one on the list was the materials and consideration form, and that one was the one Laura found, from ALA, or wherever she found it.
Actually, Arkansas.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it was another library.
And, I don't know, it seems pretty straightforward to me. It asks the questions I would want to know the answer to.
Well, my question is, it says to whom, or to what in this item or site do you object? With having it as site, I mean, in all this reconsideration form is talking about the sites, like I assume on the computer. So how can that be addressed by the board if it's a site?
That would fall under our filtering process.
Wouldn't it? I mean, that is on the computers
Right.
already, so that would be addressed through,
So I think we just cross site.
I mean,
I don't know if it's a bad thing to keep it on, just because, is there a
Or just to
form?
what in this item do you object?
Yeah, is there a form that has
Does
that?
item
Because
could be anything.
I hear the site thing is a whole nother category that has to be addressed regularly, and so I don't.
Right, and my understanding is they are
Good.
constantly
Yeah.
updating the filter because people they find ways to circumvent the filter.
Right.
And I wanna prevent that, so they're constantly doing that.
Just get it to a 15-year-old.
I know, that's,
because
I don't know.
the site can be taken down, or, I mean, if we have a tech person that's addressing the computers constantly,
Well, we pay a fee to have somebody run through to keep our filter current.
right, yeah, and if there's a site, I assume that a parent objects to, they would address it with the librarian at moment in time.
But yeah, so you could really shorten it up to what in this item do you object? Please be specific.
And just the item, I mean, it doesn't have to be, because we're not talking about just books or, and
But
it,
item can, yeah, refer to.
and it is said, does say a type of material at the top, so.
We could take it out, but it could also be that they just never check that box.
Or we could just leave it as it is.
Yeah, just leave it, and it just won't be checked ever, because people aren't gonna be referring to a site.
Well, I mean, leave it up here, but don't just put items, just item.
Yeah, just down
And the
there,
rest
just,
of it,
and then
yeah.
just leave the, please be specific.
Oh, I see what you're saying, right here, down
Right,
underneath,
right,
in
yeah.
the
Right,
middle
yeah,
of
it's
the
on
page.
each of the questions, and like I said,
Oh.
that by the time it gets to the board, it might have been already removed,
Mhm.
as far as a site per
I
se.
see what you're saying.
And they can, if it's, because internet is supposed to be quick, you know, so it has to be addressed at the time, I would think, if it was an internet site.
Mhm, that makes sense.
So, yeah, cause I'm not gonna know, I'm gonna have to ask the library what that process is.
Right, yeah, and like I said, if I were a parent that saw something on the computer at the library that was offensive, I would address it with the librarian at the in the time, because it's time
Right.
sensitive when it's on the internet.
Right, gotcha.
So, anyway, that's one of my comments.
Okay, perfect. Anything else?
So are we taking that out, or are we just gonna leave it in?
I was gonna I was gonna ask them about the internet site process. And then
Right, yeah.
on the statement, to what in this item do you object, please be specific, and drop the site off was it the
I
second
believe,
main question?
well, there's, yes, a couple questions on there that have on foresight, which, like I said, I just think that the site is time sensitive and it has to be addressed promptly.
I could tell you how that works,
Okay.
if Lee wants me to.
Go ahead.
The, filter system is a software program. I don't remember the name of the company. I did talk to them. I think we talked about this at last board meeting, the irregular. It's an organic, so they give keywords, but we can go in there and manually input our own, delete our own websites. So if a parent goes and shows a website or whatever that has bad stuff, you guys can go in there manually and adjust it. And it's recommended.
I guess the thing is, I don't want the site involved in this process. I want the site to be a much quicker turnaround. than-
I don't wanna intervene with you guys. I was just letting you know that
Yeah,
information.
That's what I think,
So
it
that's
has to
what
be
I'm gonna
addressed
clarify,
promptly. This is the way the internet works.
Is how do we get that? Are we addressing that correctly?
Well, the tech person should be addressing that.
Right.
And because we're following all state and federal laws according to, even with the computers, as far as obscenity or whatever, so the tech person would have to deal with that, because I wouldn't know what to do.
Right. Oh, no.
As a board member, I don't know if you're tech savvy enough to address
I
that
can turn my
issue.
phone on, that's about it. Okay, so are there any more about I will ask those questions and get the answer, and it will be, included in
Do
our
we have to
message.
put it in the policy? I mean,
I would think not.
I would think that it'd have to be addressed immediately, and it would have to be between the tech person and the,
It's just like
Library
the
staff in the
school,
moment.
kids, they're so good at hacking.
yeah.
Yeah, we
Very
just
good
have
at
that one
hacking,
little
and it's,
section.
you know, taken care of.
Right, yeah. So because if it has to go through this process, the reconsideration process, it could be months or years down the road.
Right, and we
Yeah.
don't want that for the internet stuff.
Yeah,
All right, so, if that's good, let's go to the materials information request form, and that's basically what we're using right now.
doing what?
Materials reconsideration. And basically, it's a way for, it is the way for, cardholders, patrons really, to ask for, books to be added or whatever to be added to the library.
And then
Well-
this is the same form for the interlibrary loan too, correct? Is that
It
how
says
I-
down here,
Yeah.
little
At the
asterisk.
bottom.
It says interlibrary loan. It's at the bottom.
Yeah, but, so do we need, does the library own this book, yes or no, and the staff initial on that? Do we need that in there?
I think if they're requesting it, his assumption is we don't own whatever
Right,
it
yeah.
is they're requesting.
Because if we have it in the library, then the librarian will direct them to that
Right, they just give it to them,
material.
yeah.
So you're
Or-
saying take that section out of there?
Yeah, and maybe, I think we discussed at the last meeting about putting staff initials and dates on the bottom of all the
Mhm.
pages of these type of things, so.
Yeah, that does seem like something that would be at the bottom that would be filled out. 'Cause
Well, there's a spot for the staff initials at the top.
Right there, does the library own, yes or no, and then has that across from that staff initials, so. Maybe we could just put that at the bottom,
Yeah,
or a
requesting,
comment
put
section
it
at the
on-
bottom for the
Yeah, put it
staff.
on the bottom. Versus right there for the person to fill out.
Right. And didn't we discuss on all these forms to have a staff initial and date on it
Yeah.
when they receive?
That wasn't material, not on the materials, but that was on the complaint.
Reconsideration.
The
form, but-
reconsideration form.
But I think on this form, it might be adequate to have to, just,
Yeah, I just suggest that one line be moved down to the bottom.
right, yeah.
I'm gonna ask him why that, if we own it, is on there. I didn't know that. All right, and then the letter basically from, the, board chair, Bob Langford, that goes, sort of describes the process.
I think it's worded pretty weird myself, but.
I'm almost afraid to ask, but what's the problem with it? It's pretty reasonable to me.
Well, it says that, we, the board of trustees, have enclosed both documents. If we're gonna put both, it seems a little, okay. The previous sentence says material selection and collection development policy.
Just take out the word both.
Well, what's the other thing that they're referring to, both? Cause that's the material selection and collection development policy, and where is the both? The request for reconsideration, I guess, is the other item, so.
That was how I took it.
So just have enclosed documents?
That's what I say. Cause I
You just take
can-
both out?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, that could be confusing.
So, yeah.
But if we take out the word both, we, the board of trustees, have enclosed documents for your review.
Right,
Then they can add as many documents as they want
right,
in the future without having to change this letter.
right.
That seems reasonable.
Yeah, simple.
Well, and I think on the one page, the steps that will be taken are outlined in the reconsideration Banner County Library materials. And I should cite the section of the policy so they can just go right to that, because they're gonna get that. So I would do that. But then they just go right to it. Okay, so. All right, we are to the actual policy.
Can we go over the reconsideration policy again?
We can.
The reconsideration section.
Yep. Okay, number 3 of the reconsideration policy. At the next regular scheduled board meeting, the trustees will consider each material reconsideration form as a separate item by creator and title in order of receipt of completed hard copy material by the director. The board is able to limit reconsideration to meet our library needs, no more than 3. Okay.
Where are you?
On the
Jeez.
reconsideration policy,
Page 6 of
6.7,
9 is the bottom.
7.
on the new one that we just got.
Yeah, 6.
Right, I thought it was 6.3.
Sorry.
So,
It's the number 3, sorry.
okay, so are we taking this in any particular order in the document, or just whatever people want to bring up?
I wanted to bring this over before we go over the complete document.
Yeah.
To me, that says that at the next regular meeting, it's gonna be addressed. I think we need to put the 3 considerations before, in the beginning of that section. So the Board of Trustees will consider no more than 3 reconsideration requests per meeting in order of receipt by the Director of completed reconsideration forms. This is the way I believe it should be worded.
Taking out the next regular scheduled meeting. Instead of focusing on the next regular scheduled meeting, you wanna focus on the fact that they're gonna take no more than 3
Right.
on that section. That's what I hear.
Right, and make it at the beginning of that section so that people aren't expecting their reconsideration to be at the next scheduled meeting.
It does kind of say that, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what that section is focusing on, right at the top very first, is that it would be at the next regular
Right,
meeting, and we discussed that, but it's not necessarily going to be.
So it would start with the board is able to limit reconsiderations to meet library needs no more than 3 materials reconsideration for the farm. And
and we do really need to have the title and creator and section in there since we having that person present it, you know. And the board should already have that information as far as what title and stuff it is, so I think number 3 should just emphasize that there will be a maximum of 3 at each meeting.
Starting out with the last sentence, or
Yeah.
after at the very end, one of them 3 material reconsideration points.
Just so that people aren't expecting their review to be at the very next meeting.
so you want to start with no more than 3, and then the board is able to limit. And that's section 3,
That is, yeah, she's talking about section 3.
and then take out the whole at the next regularly scheduled meeting part.
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, we can keep in that will consider each material reconsideration form as a separate item. But I don't see why we have to say creator and title.
Well, we want each book considered on its own merits, or each movie, or whatever.
Right, yeah, but each item can be considered in its own.
So what if we take out at the next regularly scheduled meeting, board meeting, and start with the trustees will consider each material reconsideration form as a separate item by creator and title in order of receipt of completed and hard copy materials by the director. No more than 3 materials reconsiderations form will be considered per meeting, and the board is able to limit reconsiderations to meet other library needs.
Does that work for me?
Does that work?
Yeah, I think
I just didn't want
The
that at the
next.
next meeting right
No,
there
I
in front.
see that as confusing. So okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, okay. Perfect. Anything else on that section?
Just a minute. Okay, Number 2, Bounty County Library Director will forward the Bounty County Library material reconsideration form completed in hard copy form to the Bounty County Library Board of Trustees within 7 days of receipt. I don't believe it should have to be hard copy.
Yeah, I
You
agree.
should be able to email it to the Board of Trustees within 7 days, because hard copy, that means it either goes to the mail, or it has to be hand delivered, or.
So I would just cross out in hard copy,
Correct,
completed form.
Yeah.
that's what I,
Okay, we can do that.
just so that the librarian director has that choice of being able to
Right.
email it all at once, and then that's time.
Entries.
Huh?
Yeah, and, yeah,
Entries?
and trees.
I think that's all I have for that section.
Okay, so, anything else on the reconsideration process while we're there?
Yeah, I was gonna
Number
say.
6.5.
I request, let's go.
6.5, okay, that's where I'm.
We're going back to 6.5.
What Murray brought up, so we don't miss it.
No, I was there. So 6.5, we're talking about page 3 of 9.
Yeah. Here, I don't want you to feel left out, Lee, since it's everybody else. I know you've already seen it.
That is all right.
I
The
was
minor
gonna
change
share.
in text after the Supreme Court thing.
Isn't that what it says?
It does. It does, because, and this is where the little hair splittings come, is that there is a Supreme Court definition of obscenity. And what I think the confusion is, because I printed out, you know, these, the Idaho laws, you know, which were some, 2 of them were very similar to your, you know, proposed, I mean, well, actually 2 are right on, one just.
Yeah, I think that's where he got them from.
One was just very brief, and it's referring to child pornography. So obscenity and child pornography are not the same thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, explain what you mean.
Because obscenity is, you know, something has to be pertinent in nature. It has, you know, a book or whatever has to be completely devoid of scientific, political, educational, or social value. And, you know, and, let's see, political, and describe sexual conduct in a patently offensive way. And so, then that's very different, you know, from child pornography. Because, and it also said over the age of 18.
Was
Now,
over the age of 18.
I think if you're eliminating materials from the entire library, and again, it's subjective, what you're, you know, for adults, you're telling me what I want to read.
So you're saying that things that would fall under the Supreme Court definition should be allowed in the libraries, or what's your point here exactly?
Well, my point is that you're, you know, you're trying to say, and again, it's this obscenity versus child pornography.
See, and I see it that child pornography falls under the definition of obscenity. It's a section of,
But it's.
yeah, obscenity is a big thing.
It's a big thing, because
And-
obscenity also can be any kind of defamation of character, can be fighting words that incite immediate and imminent lawless action. And that can be damaging, very damaging.
Yeah, I also see that obscenity for a child is completely different than obscenity for an adult. There are differences in it.
Yes, but, And I'm not saying, but you're saying remove it, you know, from the entire library, you're denying adults what they want to read. You're telling me as an adult that what I can and cannot.
Something, in order to come under the Supreme Court's definition of obscenity, you know, this definition basically presumes a complete lack of literary, of merit, if you will. You know, that's a pretty stiff test.
But I think it's already done.
Well, I guess the way I'm looking at it is, this is the way I'm just keeping it organized in my head, is child pornography is a crime.
Mhm.
Right.
There is a crime there, a crime has been committed, people need to be going to jail.
Right.
Obscenity is, you know, basically, things that we are not going to want in the library anyway. So obscenity is like magazines or the filters we put on the computer to keep stuff out of the library. And then there's the questionable items, which I always go back to Hemingway because he's the one that I read that had stuff in it that was questionable. And that is
And that wouldn't have
that's not
fallen under this
obscenity, that's not
definition.
pornography, that's just his story.
Correct, and I don't think that's even covered in.
And I
this, 'cause
think
I
what-
agree
what-
it's an artistic.
Well,
I think what we're talking about here is obscenity in the same way that we put a filter on the computers and stuff. It's,
Well, and we made that adjustment, you know, taking out the word adult last time, materials which come within the Supreme Court of the United States definition of obscenity will be excluded.
All I'm doing is clarifying the logic that I think we intended.
Well, but don't you,
Right.
I mean, isn't
Yeah,
it, wouldn't it be
excluded
assumed?
would be from
Would-
the entire library.
Because we're talking about the
Yeah, when we
library.
say excluded or exclude from the entire library, the meaning is the same. I'm just
It just brings clarity to the
I'm
meaning.
just trying to
of
bring
it.
a little bit of clarity. to
But
that.
how would that not be, you know, since we're talking about the
Because
library?
we have a discussion about kids.
Yeah, that's
Right.
the part that I
So
was
the prior
thinking.
sentence, the prior sentence to me is clarifying what's going to be excluded from the children or young people or young collections. So to me, those are separate things too, because, you know, we're gonna want books in the children and young people and young collections that we don't want in the adult section and vice versa.
Yeah, I think it clarifies when I read this, when you just handed it out, when I read it, the issue that I was having last meeting about keeping the whole thing that will be excluded from the young children, young adult, I was worried that those books, somebody might say, well, they're up in the adult section.
But again,
But-
if you have children younger than 18 and you're concerned about them, then I'm
Okay,
thinking somebody should
that
remove
negates,
it.
okay, that negates everything of what I'm saying. That has not even any merit of what I'm talking about. So these books that would fall under this category,
Anything
so if somebody's like, well, they'll be upstairs, the next paragraph will say that they'll be excluded. So to me, I like that he added that because then it gives me comfort that, okay, if they fall under a child obscenity law, they're not gonna be upstairs. This isn't talking about books that an adult can read. This is so much deeper than what a book an adult can read.
But if it's excluded from the entire library, then again, you're telling me what I can and cannot read.
Well,
These are
to-
books
to-
that not are books that you can read. These are books that break the law, like what he
Right,
said.
child pornography.
Correct, that should
That's
not even
different.
be in the library.
Wait a minute,
But
though,
that's
okay.
So I like it, that's my.
So this is what I think we're trying to say from my view of the library's point of view, is, you know, if you wanna get Penthouse magazine,
Yes,
or some version of that, you cannot come to the library to get it, because there is no intrinsic artistic or literary value to that. And to me, that's what this says.
And that's all about that's parent materials.
well, it's more,
That's
it's more
all
than
about
parental materials with that.
Period.
Period, means it's
Oh,
totally
okay.
about
It's in the
sexual.
word,
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I
the word in here.
Yes, So, and that's why I don't understand why it's a big deal, why you're arguing that he wants to say in the entire library. That's where I'm confused. I don't understand why.
But why would you have to say it's in the library since this is about the library? You know what I mean?
I think it brings comfort. I think it
It
brings,
clarifies
it's
a
a
lot to
clarify
get
it to
where
the point
it's
that brings
worded
comfort, and I'm not
above, that's all it
understanding the
does.
It takes the
argument.
ambiguity out of it.
Yeah,
So
I'm
like I
not-
said, it clarifies. I
I'm
think it's
not
a great
understanding the
addition.
argument against it. I know that you wanna simplify it, but it's like, if it brings comfort,
So if we say this is comforting, then we can move on?
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
Well, and
I mean, if that's all it takes,
so,
Yeah, it's just a simple thing. I think I
and
like
you're good
it.
with everything else?
well, just to clarify, let's not leave this point unexamined.
You
Wait,
What?
so,
smile, it's
so,
nice.
Yeah, rarely.
so my point, you know, cause I basically took this document to the library and had the library folks go through it, because this is going to be their operating document. And when we go from saying, when we go from saying that obscenity will be excluded in that statement, to obscenity will be excluded from the entire library, that is not a substantive change to me. And
Yeah, I think it was
my view of policy is we need to
Substantive
have,
either, actually.
as clear as we can, a document that lets people see what we're talking about. And if this clarifies the document, that's fine, because I think I've already said that, at least in my mind, when I said excluded. And from the entire library, because there is a question about the paragraph above it, but to me, that's just clarification.
I agree. When people have read that, because I know the first time I read it, and Doug had to sit here and explain, he was like, okay, it's okay. Because to me, I was worried the way I was reading it, is it was going to be moved upstairs.
Well, you're
Because
right,
we
there
have
are more
discussed that.
simple thoughts that
Mhm.
need clarification.
Yeah, so,
And then when I
that's-
did examine it, I saw
Yeah.
your point, you made a good point. And I think what Murray is now injecting in here clears that up.
it
for
does, it just,
everybody,
it
you
makes
know?
it very
Yeah.
clear, and once you explained it to me, you're like, hey, no, look at it this way, it's like, oh, I can see that, okay, that's great.
Yeah.
But this just makes it completely clear, so somebody doesn't have that moment that they're like, wait, does that mean that it's gonna be upstairs, so I'm gonna have to monitor my children while we're upstairs if I don't want them to see something
Absolutely.
that isn't downstairs? This just says, okay, this isn't gonna be allowed in the children's section, and if it falls underneath the Supreme Court's definition, don't worry, it's not in the entire library.
Well, and I think to me, that's the focus of this policy, is so that when people read it, it's clear to them. And, you know, that's the beauty of this committee, is we're finding those things in policy that sometimes gets wordy or is clear in my head, but nobody else is there, so, well, most of the time. So it just seems like that's what we need to do here, is make this so that people can look at it and say, this means what I think it means.
Yeah, I like that because it clears it up. Very simple too, very simply. Thank you for
Simple and
thinking.
clear is
Yeah.
good.
That's what.
All right,
So
So-
we're adding from the entire library.
from the entire library to the end of this paragraph. Sentence, whatever. Okay, so anything else?
Are we just kind of jumping around? Cause
Well,
I have one thing that I think would make it so that I'm done with everything else, and it has to do with the very end that we've never gone over yet.
Well, and I was gonna start that as soon as I'm sure we're pretty much done with the end of the reconsideration process.
Okay, you tell, if we're planning on getting to the end today, then
Yes.
I'll just leave
That's
it.
all.
Yeah, I'll just let it go.
No, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll wait till we get there.
so there's nothing else obvious that we need to discuss. Okay, I think we need to at least discuss the citations again, so that we're all on the same page. I know that, I went and talked to, Wilson about citing, specific laws in the page, or in the document. You know, we talked about having an appendix A with all of the different laws that we're talking about cited. And his recommendation, and, when I talked to him on Monday, he thought my email to you guys was kind of strongly worded. But his recommendation is to not cite any laws in policy, because when the law changes, the policy has to change.
What was, so if you showed it to him, what was his thought about citing those obscene material codes? Did he say to take that out, or is he like, leave that, just don't do any more?
His recommendation was to take out all law citations anywhere in the book, or in the policy.
And code.
That was my thought.
Law and code.
And code. So he would basically, those two paragraphs that we just talked about, he would recommend that they be removed. But at this point, that's not,
Can I say something in regards, so the,
no.
it's like in
No,
regards
it's
to the
not.
law,
So,
okay?
that was his recommendation. I don't know that I'm necessarily for that. To me, again, the point of policy is to clarify where we stand, and that clarifies where we stand. So I'm good with that.
I just want to understand a little bit more, since I didn't talk to him. So he would say, going back to that page 3 of 9 at the top, in 6.5, the second paragraph.
He would
So-
just remove he would take out materials. He would just take out those citations.
Yeah, so just say materials for minors under the age of 18 that violate Idaho obscene material codes for minors will be excluded from the young children's adult section. And then we would take out
He
the
would take out
definition of obscenity, or just,
He would
that's
take
the
out
only part?
materials which come within the United States Supreme Court definition of obscenity will be excluded from the entire library. So he would take out all the citations, the Supreme Court
Well, that's
definition.
not, I don't know if that's a citation.
Yeah,
But the paragraph below it where it's defining it, I would call that more of a citation than the paragraph. So it would just have those two paragraphs
Right,
minus the indented and taking out
18,
the numbers.
15, 13, and 18.
Which I don't think changes too much,
and
in my
why, what
opinion.
was his rationale for that?
His rationale was that code changes, and if you have it in code changes, so then your policy needs to reflect that. But at this point, I'm not too worried about.
Yeah,
These are-
I mean, because I think the way we have it right now, it reads pretty well and does give people somewhere to go.
And it took me 5 minutes to print those out.
Yeah, well, just having it
Well-
cited versus an
I mean,
appendix.
it's,
is what
means
you're
it's very
saying,
easy
yeah.
to look
Right,
at. 'cause I-
yeah, that's the whole point, you've given people a handle.
And a place to start looking.
Without
Place to
adding
start
an
looking, and
appendix.
Yeah,
if
and
it
I-
changes later, we can, the board can change it. I don't agree with the lawyer on that point at all. I think he's wrong.
Well,
I
that's
can
because,
understand
but
his point,
those,
but I don't think I think
I
we've
don't
covered it
think
pretty
it's-
good.
I don't think it's impactful to what we're talking about here.
I think we.
I
well,
think we
and the
need to-
numbers aren't gonna change. If they amend it, those numbers are gonna stay the same.
All right.
But,
They may
but
not.
the-
Yeah.
I mean, that can
I
be
think
changed.
we're all on the same page here.
Yeah, I
Let's
think
Let's
so
not-
too. Yeah,
let's-
let's just leave
Let's
it.
just leave it as is.
Yeah,
and
But-
just not have an appendix.
Correct, I think,
Right.
yeah, when you
Okay.
said
They can look it
that.
up.
so the way I thought coming into this meeting is last time, we all kind of agreed that we were gonna keep Appendix A, which was the Library Bill of Rights, and we weren't gonna add any more.
Right,
Are we
right.
good with that?
Yes, when you sent the email out, it's like, okay, there we go. That we're sticking with what we had
What we
decided, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's
All right.
great, we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Whoa!
Let's
Okay.
let's
Let's
not,
have a moment.
Wait,
Please
David.
clarify it for me what we have decided.
we have decided to leave as is the section that we just discussed on
6.5,
6.5, at the last three, if you wanna call it that, paragraphs will appear as they see with the correction of from the entire library on the last part of the second paragraph.
thank you.
Are we good?
We're very, very good.
6.6.
6.6.
Now, we've already made it through 6.6, and the one correction I mentioned last time was the removal of the genealogical
Right.
information, because we don't do that anymore. So 6.7 is the reconsideration policy that I'm thinking we're pretty much beyond, so I'm on page 7 of 9 with community input. And 6.8.
Well, look at 6.8, I thought we were gonna change all the card holders to digital card holders
Right.
throughout the document.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I noticed.
minor bit of trivia.
Oh, yeah, digital card.
I think you got all the rest of them.
Okay, I'm gonna have to figure out a way to abbreviate that. Okay, well, but it's gonna be the Boundary County Library digital card holders, because there's non-Boundary County Library card holders from, like, we have reciprocating with San Juan and stuff
Oh.
like that, so we have to clarify that we're doing the Boundary County
Ah.
Library digital card holders. So, it gets wordy, but we get there.
Well, we could call them BCDCs, but that sounds like a lot.
I got it.
No, we're gonna do that. I get to say that. Okay, cool. Thank you very much, sir. ACDC hates you now, right there. That's all right. We'll call them BCDC.
All right, I hate that.
I was gonna say you probably don't have much respect for him either.
All right, so let's go through, shall we just read, you want me to just read through these last 3 pages? And then
Sure.
I think we get to your,
Yeah, I actually see something else that I forgot about here in the fifth section,
so as I'm going by, just stop me. So 6.8, community input. Boundary County Library staff welcomes and encourages input from the community concerning the collection. The Boundary County Library Director welcomes suggestions for purchase to shape collections that serve the interests and needs of the community. Suggestions for purchase are subject to the same selection criteria as other materials and are not automatically added to the collection. Boundary County digital card holders may make suggestions for purchase using the materials request form available at the circulation desk. Any questions about that?
I would like to go back to what Laura presented at one of the meetings about putting a kindness, be kind.
Oh, in there,
Yeah, the
how
community
you mean
input.
appropriate patron?
Oh, I thought we decided that went into the, if I remember what you're talking about, went into the employee handbook, not the policy.
Well,
Is
the
that what we're
employee
talking about?
handbook should have something in it about be nice to the patrons
Yeah.
as an
Yeah.
employee.
So
But
we need to
I
put
think
something
what
for the
Linda was-
patrons to
or-
Be
be.
nice to the
Oh.
librarian.
Right.
And you know, and the sad
I
thing
see what you're
is,
saying.
3 times in the last 2 weeks, I've been in businesses that have something up there, please be kind to the folks that are working here. And one on a phone call, I had to call out, please be kind to our representatives. I think we are in such a sad society that we have to tell adults to be kind to one
That's so
another.
true.
When Laura first presented it, I was like,
Yeah.
of course, everybody knows that, and just like,
Oh,
then I
really?
thought about it.
And
Just like,
it's
maybe we
sad.
should put a, I mean,
But
I don't know
anyway,
how to word it.
I mean, I agree with you, I just don't know if this is the place to put it. I think the director should hang up a sign and have that be some of the
oh, yeah. And they can-
rules, but I don't know if
there've
it's
been
a
some- yeah.
selection thing, cause I do agree with you.
So, not taking a stand on the kind of thing, what does any of this have to do with the
That's-
collection?
Well,
That's
that's,
my
yeah,
point.
Right.
and I think, yeah, cause it's input, but I think in a kind manner.
Hmm.
You know, to go in there and yell at somebody.
Well, hopefully if they're requesting a book, I know if I was going to go in and get a book, I
Well, and
would
the
be pretty
reconsideration of
excited.
it, you know, because sometimes emotions can run high and it can get out of hand.
So having talked to
Breathe.
the librarians, you know, because I stop by fairly regular, and they seem to be very happy with the way they are being treated
Good.
in the community,
Good.
you know,
That's
so.
good.
I would say that people are being considerate, and honestly, I don't know that it fits in here.
Okay.
So-
But that's very positive. I
Yes.
mean, I'm
Right,
glad
yeah.
to hear that there's some kindness being demonstrated and I agree too, that maybe the director would put up, you know, something just to remind people that it's,
Well, this is sort of for the public too, so, I mean. it needs to be-
yeah, community
Because
input.
Well, and I
Employee
guess
handbook doesn't,
Yeah, they will
Go
never read
public.
it, yeah, well,
what I might do is put it at the top of the page or somewhere, or maybe even in the director's letter, or the letter from the,
right.
you know, just as like a little catchphrase at the end or something. I can do that. We'll figure that. So is there any questions about 6.8? Okay, 6.9, gifts of books and other Boundary County Library materials in good condition are gratefully accepted with the understanding that they will not necessarily be added to the collection. The same collection criteria used for the purchase of materials are applied to gifts. The Boundary County Library assumes ownership of all donated materials and reserves the right to sell or otherwise dispose of gift materials not added to the collection. The Boundary County Library reserves the right to refuse conditional donations.
all right, that's where my thing is with conditional donations. I know we stated that the conditional donations have to follow. There was a time last year that I sat in a board meeting that there was $10,000 donated, with the condition that some books were purchased. I thought it would have been appropriate as a community member sitting in the audience to know what those conditions were. I don't even think they were told to the board what those conditions were. It was just these are the conditions and we accepted the money and the conditions were just kept secret. As a community member, it felt like. So I don't know if that's appropriate to put in here, that the conditions will be presented. I can understand if somebody wants their name kept anonymous, because it was from an anonymous, and I had no issue with that as a community member, knowing that it was anonymous, but at the time I thought, well, what conditions are they talking about?
But I think, isn't that what that says? They can refuse.
Yeah, they can refuse, but you have to know the conditions that you're refusing.
Yeah, it was kept, not only was the name being kept anonymous, my point is that the condition was being kept anonymous, and I didn't think that was right as a community member. To me,
So
I'm
you're
like,
looking for more transparency.
correct. That reminded me when I read it, the moment reminded me how I felt as a community member, that it's like, I didn't mind that they were keeping their name anonymous, but I thought it was wrong to keep the
What the
condition
conditions were.
anonymous, to accept the money.
So if it says the Boundary County Library reserves the right to refuse conditional donations, there would almost have to be a second paragraph that runs along the lines of all conditions will be
Transparent?
transparent.
Yeah, something. I
Presented
couldn't,
at the board meeting. or
yeah, I
something.
couldn't think of how to
Can-
word it, but I just knew what.
Donation conditions will be presented at the board.
I like it.
And,
Like to be evaluated for practicality
Right,
or
yeah.
something
Right,
along those
yeah.
lines.
So
but
if,
the donor can stay anonymous.
Yeah, and that,
so if
Yes, I agree. I
somebody
think
gives
it needs to
the
be.
library $10,000 and says, I want to remain anonymous,
That's,
then the board says, we have accepted this conditional donation of $10,000, and the condition is the donor wishes to remain anonymous.
I probably would have even felt better if the board would have said, I've read the conditions, but they were never even given the conditions.
Okay.
So even if the board saw the conditions, it seemed to be keeping secret all the way around.
so the $10,000
Was accepted.
But I mean,
And the
so they
condition-
had specific books they bought with that $10,000?
As far as
for
I
patrons?
understood, because
I mean,
it was,
the donor,
say that again?
the donor gave
No, they-
$10,000 worth of books.
no, they
No.
required that the
Yes,
Oh, they
library,
were stipulating what books were going to be,
Correct.
okay.
Which, to me, as a community member, I'm like, why are we accepting this without knowing what the conditions are?
Donation conditions will be presented at the board meeting or to the board.
Or just, or at the board meeting.
because I assume that the directors,
It was the
Presenting it,
director
so-
presenting it,
so,
So-
the,
however she wants to present it at the board meeting, yeah.
So what I'll probably do is put this in yellow and then put the board, and this is probably gonna be one of the things we'll talk about when we get there.
I totally think the board should.
Okay. So receipts are limited to acknowledgement of the quantity and format of materials donated. Assignment of value for income tax or other purposes is the responsibility of the donor. Boundary County Library will not appraise gifts or endorse appraisals obtained by donors. Monetary gifts may be designed as memorials or given in honor of individual or special occasions, subject or title preferences of donors will be honored insofar as possible, but the Boundary County Library reserves the right of final selection. An appropriate acknowledgement will be placed on items acquired with gift funds.
I have a question, Tim. I want to be real brief with this because this is almost kind of a personal thing. So if I donate a bunch of really expensive art books to the library that are kind of on the border of being, rare collector's items, or there'd have to be a judgment made, I can still make that donation and then the library decides whether they're gonna auction them off and put them in the collection or whatever. Is that how that would work?
Or put it in their book sale, they put a lot of books in the book sale that they can take in.
They do, and I think, and we covered it kind of at the very start of, this is just a production library, it's not a rare book
Right.
library. So I would imagine that if you donated something of value, the idea would be we would probably try to obtain that value instead of try to manage that rare resource.
Right, which is totally fine. I just want to make sure that they're willing to accept the donations or something.
Well, maybe
Right.
you could put a condition if somebody did that, I'm donating this under the condition if it's not in the library, I get it back, versus going to the book
Can
sale.
they do that?
I
Do whatever they want, I would think.
Because I heard that
I think
as a
you've already
complaint.
answered my key question, just would you accept the donation on it? Putting the strings on it wasn't part of my concern.
Or it goes to a museum.
Well, and I think the refuse of conditional donations is where what you're talking about would fall. If the conditions were too onerous, we just let you keep your book.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think is the way that would go.
yeah,
Okay.
that would be a personal, one-on-one basis thing.
Okay, no guarantee is made that gift materials selected for inclusion in the collection or materials acquired with gift funds will be kept permanently or will continue to be replaced indefinitely if worn, damaged, or lost.
So kind
Yeah.
Yeah.
Explanatory.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, 610, are we good? 610, collection maintenance. To maintain an up-to-date and useful collection, ongoing evaluation and judicious weeding of the collection is necessary. Materials are withdrawn if they have little or no use or have been superseded by a more recent addition or better work on the same subject. Are there questions about weeding? Because that's kind of a library term for removing books.
Yeah, the standard.
Okay. Replacement decisions about material withdrawn because of loss or physical damage will be based on the number of copies of the title already owned and continued demand, continued value of the title and significance as identified in standard bibliographies, local relevance of the title, author, illustrator, or producer, uniqueness to the collection, alternative coverage of the subject or genre in the collection, availability of newer or better materials on the subject, number of copies owned, information used to make decisions about removing a title from the collection included. Review of statistical information such as circulation reports, collection turnover rates, and electronic resource use statistics, visual inspection of materials to determine poor condition, Boundary County Library holdings compared to standard bibliographies and recommended purchase lists. Okay? Good, all right, inventory. Materials inventory will be conducted in even numbered years unless it is otherwise deemed necessary by the Boundary County Library Director or requested for insurance purposes. Reading is carried out in an ongoing manner. Materials that have not circulated within a 5-year period or circulate sporadically and are not evaluated to be central to the core collection will be removed from the collection.
I have something with that, with this whole thing, just thinking of what Sandy said once, is that even with all of this, there's something against removing a classic, that she can't touch a classic book and take it out. And it was just something she said at a board meeting once that I'm not sure where that came from, because I don't see it in the policy here. I don't know if it's even pertinent, but she said something about that, so that
They
made me
have
think.
defined classic.
Exactly. I don't know. I just remember her saying that once.
So what you're saying is like Ogfin,
Correct,
even if people aren't taking it out
correct, even if
within
it's
this
on the,
5-year
yeah,
period,
it's still,
will remain in the
it
library.
still couldn't be removed, according to what Sandy said at one time.
Or Moby Dick.
And she may have
Yeah.
been just,
Yeah, exactly, and I don't
Well,
know.
are you proposing that we add something?
I'm not, I'm just wondering if it is something that is all like a library law, if it already needs to be added, or if we, that's the thing, that your face shows exactly what I'm thinking in my head, but I don't know where she got it from.
I will ask that
I
question.
see
I
Sandy
don't-
pretty knowledgeable, but
well,
I'm not
she
sure.
is, I think maybe it's in conversation, maybe that was something she was passionate about.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, you could be
classics.
right. I just remembered it right now while you were reading. I don't even have it in my notes.
Now that I think about it, I think that's a pretty important thing. Because just because nobody is,
Checking out
reading
Huckfin
Homer
or
anymore
Moby
doesn't
Dick,
mean
yeah.
we dump Homer from the,
Yeah, that would be
From the
a,
library.
that would be a
Maybe
sad
that's
day if
something-
we are.
I actually
You
ran
could
into this
pursue
at the
that may
University
be in
of
something
Washington,
else.
because a lot of
Well,
the source
I'll
materials
ask the question.
for Western Civ, which are no longer being taught, they were gonna dump them, and there was a big fight about it, and now luckily, the University of Washington has enormous amounts of storage space. All the classics, or a great many of them, especially a lot of Civil War history that was written by Southern writers and other stuff that's not in fashion now, that all got dumped into a basement off campus somewhere, and it would take a week to get it, and you could still get it, but you guys don't have that kind of space here. And I think that there is a potential danger of losing good stuff now that you think about it.
That's the whole reason I'm sitting here today,
Yeah.
is that
Right.
fear of that happening, and it is happening.
Well,
And
even
And it
if-
has
Please
happened
don't look
historically
into it and
before, so it's not
Right.
like it's an unusual thing.
Well, and I just don't know the answer to that question.
at the last book sale, or the book sale that Mary Esther and I were at,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
there was, you know, Abraham Lincoln and
I tried to stuff and find places in my book.
just like,
I
there was
still
there
haven't
was
found for some of
very
them.
historic books, I felt that were,
Such
and
good.
what did they do with the books after
well, and
the
some
sale?
are duplicates too, right? that are
They were
book-
not, they were old books that.
These-
From the
like,
library itself.
From the library, yeah, that was, were in the book sale.
The more I think about this, the more I think we should have some kind of motion that goes into the minutes, that there should be protections in place for classic books of long-standing or enduring
So-
merit, however you want to.
How do you define classic book?
Don't they have, so I'm thinking while we're talking here, back in our selection
In the children's
criteria.
section, it said classic literature or something, didn't it?
Yeah, we're going backwards, but I think
Classical.
this is a very important point that now,
Yeah.
that it's gone into. So back in the selection criteria, we had stated, what the director would use, but I'm not finding it now, what they would use to determine the merit of a book. And is there, and here we go, on the actual first page on the very bottom. The critical review, all of this, is there something out there, and I'm not familiar with it, that would, can we put in this section, something that would help protect books like that?
See, I think it should go into that weeding section, because this says, you know.
You're right, yeah,
weed
yeah,
in, but,
yeah.
but you don't want it weeded.
No, correct, so maybe we do add something in there, because I'm surprised now that I'm reading it over again that isn't included.
And maybe there's a paragraph that would protect the classic.
I don't,
Cause I think we
nothing's really
should,
coming to my mind.
that's, to me, that's the biggest part of a library, and I talk to my husband often about it, that books are becoming not obsolete, but in a way they are. Like DVDs right now, with my kids the age that they are, they don't want DVDs, everything is digital. And I see books going along that same path, that the only new books I'm seeing, a lot of new books coming in, and we talk about replacing the new books in the library. We have a small library, and I'm worried our library is going to become mostly new books, and I see a library, it is going to turn into a point, a library is a harbor of historical documents. because
Well,
books
it's a
are,
custodian of a
Thank you.
civilization.
thank you.
So you're saying almost that in the inventory for exclusion would be any books defined as a classic, that be any book that has a historical impact on like the molding of Western civilization, something like that, right? Like Homer.
So how about,
Well, if you want to get specific, something like the University of Chicago's list of the great books of Western civilization is just one that comes to mind. I think that may not be quite long enough for.
Of course, that library in Chicago is really,
Right.
really.
But I'm just saying that people have grasped before, again, I went through this fight at the UW over Lee's lieutenants of all things. That may not be familiar to you guys because you're not Southerners as far as I know. But it's a
Fine.
it's
But
a
it's part of
very,
history.
Well,
Yeah,
good
yeah.
for you to be
Part of
part,
history.
so
Okay.
pretty
That would be
Good
a book I'd
man.
probably want to
versed
read.
on all that.
but the problem is nobody at the UW recognized that they didn't know what they had. They had a first edition set of Lee's lieutenants, which at an earlier time in the 1930s and 40s, that was the definitive work on the Army of Northern Virginia. And they were gonna toss it, not so much out of political correctness, although that may have entered into it a little bit, was because nobody knew what it was. And I think especially since we've had 2 going on 3 generations of students who've been educated after they dumped the Western Civ requirement, more and more, including a lot of librarians in my own experience, have no idea what a lot of this stuff even is. So I think
Yeah,
there is a
that's-
danger there.
Yeah, that is a great example. I'll give an example of what I saw happening in our own library. I like the story Anne of Green Gables, and I've seen the classic Anne of Green Gables get replaced with the new version of Anne with an E, which doesn't follow the classic version, and I think that's very tragic for our children.
But they're still being read.
Really, okay.
They're what?
They're still being read. And Green Gables are still being read.
Yes, but there was a lot of Anne of Green Gables that I don't think all of them were gotten rid of, but I was watching that. So that's in our own library. I just wanna make sure we protect like Anne of Green Gables, so there isn't a moment in time where they're like, well, this isn't pertinent, nobody's renting it. They're renting this new version, Anne with an E, and so we're just gonna get rid of the old version. I think that would be a very tragic time.
so what do we think of, I would put in, and it would probably fit closer to the front for what we were talking about materials selection. But I would put in, materials of enduring or historic value will be preserved as possible. And I would put as possible in there because again, we have a small library and our library is not getting bigger. So I can't say we're going to keep all books. But I understand the need to have books of value.
Yeah, I'd like that just because it will drop a little seed into the director to know, hey, this is important. And I think that's enough that they will,
Well, and I think they're all very aware, but I
Yeah.
am not against putting something along that line.
I actually like that.
And so you said historical? Can we
I
put
said
historical
his-
and classical value?
Enduring or historic value is what the
Can you
two
put
words.
classical in there too?
Enduring, comma, historical, comma, classical.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, I think it's very simple, and I think it lets us, it covers it all in one simple.
So let's start with classic, because you get to start with the lowest, but, so materials of classic, enduring, or historical value will be preserved as possible.
Yes.
Yeah,
Good with that?
Sounds great.
Yeah, I like
I
that.
think
Thank
that
you.
clarifies it pretty well.
Yeah.
And I would expect to find that, actually, it might do best in the 611 inventory section. So it would be like the third paragraph.
Right.
Yeah,
Sixth.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think that actually makes it stand out
Yeah,
better, it's more
I agree.
appropriate, yeah.
Because of this discussion.
That we're putting a value
Yeah.
on classical literature.
Right, so if we're doing our inventory and we see this book hasn't been out in the 5 years or whatever, we still will give it an extra thought depending on.
Because of its class. its
But
value.
again, we are a small library. So,
Yeah, and it
There-
has to serve the community, for
Right.
sure.
And then there is
and
always
the other thing is you can always do this
Interlibrary loan,
there's
that's what I
other
was
ways
just
to
gonna say.
access it.
Yeah,
And if it becomes an issue, then maybe we get another copy of it.
Well, but like Mary Esther was pointing out, they've changed everything. I
Right.
mean, even the books that are published now are different than they're not classical.
Well, I
per
think
se.
there's
And
So
still
they try
like,
and abbreviate them
Written
and
too, but
they
Yeah.
distort them, I think.
that's, and if I really like something like that, I buy it.
you go buy it. That's right. So all
I'm
we know is I
a
really
book
like I bought
collector,
that
so.
book online.
And
So.
I like it as close to the incident that, so I like old books too, so.
So that is it.
Except for
we
the
didn't do
annual
6.5.
review, that's the
Oh,
part
we
I
did?
wanted to get
oh,
to.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. The policy will be reviewed annually by the Benedict County Library Director and the Policy Committee. The recommendations for revision will be sent to the Benedict County Board of Trustees for review and approval.
So I wanna scratch that it's, reviewed annually by the director, cause I think that's the whole point of the problem that we got into. I think we just need to put that this policy reviewed annually by the library board of
by the
trustees.
library.
So,
board of
but
trustees.
how about if the policy will be reviewed annually by the Benedict County Library Policy Committee?
I don't know if you're gonna need a committee.
How about if we put annually?
Well, this
I think it
is
needs to
reviewed annually
specify-
by the board.
Board, yes, I
Board
think
of
it needs to be
trustees.
specific, the board, I don't think it's appropriate for the director to be writing their own policy that they're supposed to follow. I think that's the whole thing with ICRIMP is that they brought up that the board should be writing it for the director, not the director being like, well, this is how I'm gonna
Yeah,
run myself.
yeah, because then it takes the whole bandwidth out of having the board to begin with. I
Yes,
agree with you.
yeah, so it's like, I don't
And
think
there
our
are
So
representatives
I
there.
guess to me, policy committee means two things. Policy committee means this thing that we've done before, but, or we're doing now, but before it was two members of the board is a policy committee.
Well, I think that's something the board can designate at the time. I think just in the policy, it should just say the board, and then if the board is like, hey, you guys go do it, let's vote on that, then the board can decide what members of the board are doing it. But I don't think it needs to be in here. I think it should just simply say
Take out that
board.
middle part.
Mhm.
Can I make a comment though, before we change everything?
Oh, I've already crossed it out.
Oh. Okay, I'll shut up. A lot of these questions that have come up could have been answered right now if the director would have been here.
Mhm.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
you know, what do you do with this book, and, you know, the little questions could
There
have
was
been
supposed to
answered
be a
right
library
here,
staff.
and maybe this meeting would have taken,
Mhm.
committee would have taken so long if we would have had the director here to say, oh, this is how we do
How it's
it.
done.
And,
Yeah, they were invited, but.
yeah,
At
no,
the
but I
time,
mean,
there
if we
wasn't
had a
one,
real
but there was
director,
a-
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
this is- yeah.
Well, and I don't know, I would hope that the next time we go through this, that it's much smoother.
Who goes through it?
Yeah. It should be, if it's looked at, and that's one thing I thought too, it's like, does it really need to be annually? It's like, well, if they just address it annually, then if they might be like, well, no, we like it, it's good, it's done. It's just something as simple as that, so I don't think annually is.
Well, and most of the time, it's just been a rubber stamp,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so the last page is the appendix. So we have made several changes, and there's a couple of typos that were found by the library staff.
After you're all done making the substantive changes that we talked about, although they're actually pretty minor, are you gonna take me up on my offer to proofread the whole thing?
So that's what I was thinking is, I probably won't get this, put together today, because I don't have enough time left in the day. But what I expect to do is at the end of this meeting, you know, thank you very much for your kind service, and then we don't have a meeting again. But I will send this as I've got notes, to everyone, so that we're all looking at the same thing. And then, if you could let me know that you are good with it and check off, then I would present it to the board as soon as you guys do that. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So I would expect you guys to get an email from me sometime, because tomorrow morning is gonna be the other meeting. So tomorrow afternoon, I hope to have this out and sitting in your inbox. And then as soon as you get it back to me, I forward it on to the other board members. Does that work?
So if we see anything, then we just email you directly instead of.
And just look at those things, if you wanna just look at the things we talked about, if you wanna just, but I make mistakes, obviously, so make.
So this is gonna be the proofreading stage.
This is the proofreading stage, this means that I've captured everything you've told me and I put it in this document. That's what I'm looking for, okay? All right, yes, champagne, where's champagne?
Yes.
Are we doing public comments today?
We are, public, nobody signed up, nobody signed up, so.
To me, this tells me people are feeling pretty confident.
Yes, I think so.
Well, and that's
Thank you for
really
coming.
largely to you folks is as the voices of the community, which you are, to,
I think it's been a good representation.
right. And then this room used to be full of chairs
Yeah.
and people,
Yeah.
and it is not now. And I think that's because you guys have taken this on.
And
And
they
it's-
got tired of listening to us.
It could be that too.
They got tired of hearing me.
I think what you're trying to say is that people feel that their voices are being represented.
Right,
So they
right.
don't, maybe aren't quite as paranoid as they were a year ago.
I hope so.
So,
They're getting their garden.
did you have anything that you wanted to say?
I think you guys did good. I think the classical is very important. One of the things, my kids are teenagers now, but I just enjoyed the movies and the books, sharing with them that I enjoyed as a kid. So I think that's important.
Bring back Uncle Remus.
And like you said, sometimes there's a gap where nobody cares about those books. But then those, like me, there was probably a gap with the Goonies for the longest time, the movie The Goonies. But I was so excited to show my boys that 20 years later.
Chairs away?
Actually, it turns out we can leave them, so.
Oh.
So I motion that we.
Oh, wait.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
I'll
Oh,
second
first though,
Oh,
Do we have the motion?
I need a motion that we accept
oh, I
the,
make a motion that we accept
policy
the policy.
with the changes.
After, and then we're going to prove it.
Second.
Now, real quickly,
who
is
said second?
I did.
is grammar checking sending to you, is that considered deliberation?
That's what we're gonna be doing.
Well, no, but that would be considered 2 or more.
Thank you.
See you.
If they email you the grammar checks, isn't that considered deliberation of 2 or more? Maybe ask Wilson just in
But
case.
we're not an official board, we're a committee.
You're still,
Well,
Public
and the goal is not
Yeah.
to change the substance.
I don't know, just ask Wilson, because I don't want you to get in trouble, that's all.
Yeah, I think we're okay.
Yeah,
Because it is deliberation, and and the committee is sanctioned by the board. The only time a committee can deliberate outside 2 or more is when the director has a committee, like in her office, without you guys.
I think if he emails it out to us, you check in, email him directly without doing reply all. I think we're
Okay.
okay.
I'm just gonna say, just check with Wilson.
If he sees a big enough thing that we need to meet, then he'll let us know if we need
Yeah.
to meet. If it's just something like, oops, I forgot a comma there, or
Yeah.
that should be it instead of
And Lee, I'm not here to be a stickler, I'm just covering tracks, and actually ICRIP in the training, remember at the Welcome Center?
yeah.
We actually talked about emailing how you guys should
Yeah,
be.
he did, I
So,
remember that.
email was,
Yeah, right. Very much.
my understanding of the way you get in trouble with email is if you're being decisional. You don't want to be pre-decisional.
So grammar checking wouldn't be
To
considered.
me, grammar checking is just making sure the document's.
Okay, I'm just saying,
It's their
I'm just recommending a double check just in case.
That's fine.
Okay.
I can do that.
Okay.
Ladies number. So,
Logistically streamlined.
are we, we're done.
Yeah, so I motion we adjourn.
The cats are
Oh,
scattered.
sorry.
I thought that was
I thought we had done.
Oh, did we already do it?
No, I don't
I
think so.
think we stopped it
accepted
and went back
policy.
to the policy.
Oh,
And now we're adjourning.
okay. Well, thank you, everybody.